Today, I want to talk to you about the notion of free will and help you accept the possibility that there is no free will. Back then, when I first understood that there was no free will, it gave me lots of anxiety in my life. I remember I was depressed. I think it was the lecture by philosopher Sam Harris, which I watched. And I remember being depressed for about 1 month, just hyper focused and obsessed about my behavior and just like trying to look my decisions and actions under the microscope and really like check whether I was making the decisions myself or decisions were just happening. And I couldn't really reconcile the notion of no free will, lack of free will, until I understood what it really entailed, right? So the reason I decided to make this video is because I'm a huge fan of Dr. Robert Sapolsky. I watched all his Stanford lectures and have been following his work for a long time now. I like his books, Why Zebras Do Not Get Ulcers, Behave, and most recently a book, Determined. I think he's a great thinker. And he recently published this book, and I think that lots of people will have a sense, this like almost like existential dread, that if there's no free will, then what am I doing? Like, why should I make any decision? It's really a weird notion, and many people do not understand it. So first of all, before diving deeper, I should say that I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a psychologist, I'm a neurologist, which is someone who studied medicine and studied brains and brain disease. But I will be referring to the works of philosophers such as Sam Harris and scientist Robert Sapolsky. So first of all, let's start off with Robert Sapolsky. And by the way, this is how I understand it. If you want to understand it yourself, you should read the entire book. So the way I understand his work, what he's saying, and basically what he has been saying his entire career is that so Robert Sapolsky's view is a little different from Sam Harris, who has a more consciousness-based explanation for why there is no free will. So Robert Sapolsky's explanation and his take basically is that if you have not chosen the input for the output, meaning your behavior or the action, how can you say that your volition or your will was free? In the most simplistic terms, so when you were a baby, you hadn't chosen your parents, you hadn't chosen your genes, you hadn't chosen the environment in the womb, the various hormones and toxins that were floating around in the womb when you were a baby. So you hadn't chosen your genes, parents, womb, then you hadn't chosen the country, you hadn't chosen the language, you hadn't chosen the education, you hadn't chosen pretty much anything. Then how can you say that whatever is happening around you is coming from your volition? What is the basis for that? And this is one degree of argument. Then the argument becomes even more harder when you support it with like evidence from brain science. For instance, like there is a Libet experiment, famous Libet experiment, where they studied stimulus and response, and they had the subjects to record when they felt like they were making the decision. And it turned out that when people felt like they were making a decision, their brain actually registered activity before them. Let's say I want to move my finger, and I will tell you, okay, now I felt the urge to move my finger upwards. And when I tell you the exact precise moment, okay, 3 p.m., I notice my urge to move my finger upward. And I tell you, I noticed that urge at 3 p.m. And you tell me, your brain registered activity for you to move that finger even before that, even before you consciously notice the urge to move your finger, okay? And then they have other experiments where they stimulate the part of the brain and urge delays. The person feels like they're making a decision, but that decision actually came from the brain stimulation. And when people hear these, they still have a sense that they are making the decisions. The scientific method of studying free will has some drawbacks because not all people feel compelled to believe it. And I think that real bulletproof way to understand free will is to observe how you make decisions subjectively, like consciously. How do you make them? And this is where the philosophy of Sam Harris comes in. So when I first listened to his lecture, he has this thought experiment. He asks you to choose a city. I do not remember the exact thought experiment, but it basically goes like this. You are choosing a city in which you want to go for a vacation, and then he asks you, why did you choose that specific city? Let's say you say Paris. Then he asks you, like, why did you choose Paris? There are so many cities in this world. Why specifically did you choose Paris? And people actually do not like this experiment. They think that it is not evidence for our lack of free will. They think that if they truly did not have free will, they would not come up with the justification for why they chosen the city that they have chosen. For instance, like, I can say that I chose Paris because my grandparents are from there, and I have been planning a vacation to Paris for a year now, and that's why I chose Paris. And then this thought experiment becomes a little muddy because then you have to explain to people that you haven't chosen the justification as well. So the argument becomes endless letter. So the either way to understand free will is to learn how to meditate, because if you learn how to meditate and learn to observe your own thoughts, it becomes really, really easy to see why we have no free will. And once you learn how to observe your thoughts, then it becomes really easy because you can see how you're making the decision in the first person. For instance, let's say in the morning you are making the decision drinking coffee versus drinking tea, and you want to understand whether you have a free will or not, whether it's a free decision or it's not. Let's say you chose coffee and then you told me that I think I have a free will because I chose to drink coffee because this morning I felt groggy, and the justification is that I want to feel stimulated. So first of all, you did not choose to be groggy. You had a bad sleep last night and you felt groggy, your body felt groggy, so you did not choose to be groggy. Idea to cancel your grogginess or stimulate your body to not feel groggy, that was the idea that also came to your mind. You did not choose to be groggy. You did not choose the idea to not be groggy. It was just like something that you felt. That's what you are saying, right? I felt groggy and I felt the need to stimulate my body. So hence I went and drank coffee. You have not really freely chosen any of the steps. At first this is hard because unless you know how to notice the thought once it's emerging, it's really hard to tell why you lack free will. Because if you are always fused with this thought, and you have never had the moment when you have a sense that, oh, this is a thought, I'm here and this is a thought, I'm having a thought. It's almost like observing your thoughts. It's really hard to know what we are talking about. When you notice that you are having a thought and you are digging deeper and just undermining the thoughts, unless you really have this mindfulness skills, you cannot really understand that the thoughts that you are using to undermine a certain thoughts, that thoughts too are automatic. You are not choosing them. It's just like layer after layer and layer after layer, and there is no like one core, unmoving, unshakable substance that is always there and is giving rise to the instrumental thoughts, let's say. Instrumental thoughts that are helping you to undermine or study the thoughts that feels like they're automatic, right? Everything that is happening, the thoughts that are helping you to understand other thoughts, they are too automatic. So I actually felt depressed until I understood this. So I was saying that when I first understood this concept of lack of free will and this whole notion of what is free will and how we make decisions, I became depressed, and I remember I couldn't study. My concentration was always trying to really understand whether it was true or not, until I fully realized what it was all about. When I realized that the self that is having a reaction towards the lack of free will, the self that is telling you that it can be true, like it's like almost like jumping on the boat to somehow find the evidence that the decisions that you are making is coming from the free will. That self too is lacking free will. That self too is emerging from the brain. And what is that self? It is almost like a streaming service that our brain provides, right? The self, essentially, like if you meditate really closely, the self is an image that is being broadcasted in your mind. For instance, right now when I'm recording this, I have a sense that I'm here, this camera is there, there is a light there is a desktop here, chairs, tables and stuff like that. And this is like my body's way to understand myself and the objects in this space. And we need this to move, we need to not bump into other objects, and it's important for survival and stuff like that. But look closely, sometimes when we are reading something interesting or watching a movie, that sense of self drops, and you can have a split-second moment of understanding that you lost yourself. You were completely absorbed in it. Image in your canvas of your consciousness that your brain was broadcasting was turned off. We can talk about like the default mode network and stuff like that, but it sounds like the experience of being a self and riding the body, it's too is emerging from the brain. It's emergent phenomenon, and that's something we feel. And if you look closely, it's images and thoughts. It's not distinguishable to the decisions that you are making on the basis of your thoughts. Let's say you say, I want to drink coffee, I want to drink tea, and the self that is making the decisions, that self too is under the umbrella of lack of free will, because you are not choosing the self with which you choose the other things. The sense that something inside you is not being able to accept the notion of lack of free will, examine that too, examine those thoughts too, because those thoughts too are the same coin. It's just like the other side of the coin. If the one side of the coin is lack of free will, the other side of the coin is the self that cannot accept the idea of lack of free will. That is the main reason why I don't like to view this notion of free will in the sense of determinism, because people who are not really faithful with this discussion and they are motivated to disregard the notion of lack of free will, they will say that determinism in a true physics sense is not true, because we have randomness, we have quantum physics, we have double slit experiments, electrons are all of a sudden making this like almost like free decisions, and determinism breaks down at the level of quantum physics, and it sounds like there is a randomness in the equation as well, sounds like there is a chaos, stuff like that. And hence, if determinism is not true, and we were discussing this notion in lens of determinism, they will kick the determinism notion out of the window, out of the door, and the free will discussion with it. They will tell you that, oh, if determinism is not true, hence we have a free will. That is the reason why when I explaining it to someone, I never explain it via determinism or physics or anything like that, because they always attack it with the idea of randomness and miss the entire point. So to take this discussion even farther and really make it like as simple as we can, let's imagine that we had this discussion 250,000 years ago. Okay, we are sitting by a campfire, we are hunter-gatherers. Let's think about this in the sense that can we study the notion of free will, and suppose we have a language and we can communicate, can we have a sense, can we really have a discussion about having or not having free will without any science, without being able to know anything about brain, even having a belief that we have a brain, because some philosophers thought that brain was to cool off our blood, right? So can we really study our free will or our conscious volition without any science? And I think we can, because the experience that we have, the sense of smell, just the experience of sitting, experience of like I'm here and you are there, ability to walk and feel the ground has been there for 200,000 years. It's not something that we have recently invented, right? We have invented science, we have invented tools to study ourselves, but the consciousness has been there all around, And suppose we were conscious, and I believe we were conscious 200,000 years ago, we could have the same discussion about free will, and we would just like use different terms. We would just ask different questions, right? Instead of coffee and tea, we would talk about, I don't know, something else. We would talk about like imagine a lion or a snake and something like that, right? It all boils down to observing your conscious experience, having a sense that whatever is happening, whatever is emerging, whatever is entering the canvas of your mind, of your consciousness, that is something that's emerging, that's something that is happening, that is something that is unfolding. And the sense that you, as a separate sense of self, is choosing it, that too can be studied, that too can be examined. And once looked closely, that you sometimes is gone. You can get absorbed in a movie. God forbid you can take certain psychedelics that can give you unquestionable experience of lacking self, and you have a sense that 5-MeO DMT I have not taken. There are people who've taken it, but I have taken this 5-MeO DMT. My sense of self sloughed off. I no longer feel like self. It's like I call it like this proprioception got decoupled basically, and you no longer feel like it's just one giant soup of atoms floating freely and feel boundless, and you have no longer this isolated sense of self, but you're alive. And it sounds like there are those thoughts and things are still unfolding. Why? Because that sense of self was a content of your consciousness. It wasn't the fundamental attribute to make you feel alive. You want this in daily life, because if you felt like what it feels like under 5-MeO DMT all the time, it would be really hard to exist, right? I do not suggest that the sense of self doesn't have a role in our mental functioning, mental lives, but the sense of self is lacking free will as well. That's the central message of this video. The sense of self is lacking free will as well. If you want to accept, if you believe that there is no free will, and if it troubles you, the one belief that you're missing, the reason why you're struggling, is that the sense of self too is lacking free will. So once you understand that, and once you see that the lack of free will and the sense of self, the idea of sense of self, or someone who is being worried about lack of free will, is two sides of the same coin. It's two sides of the same coin. I think lots of people struggle because they do not understand this. They think that they lack free will, and it's almost like they are being puppeted. They are toys being played by someone. The sense of them, the sense of you, sense of I that is being played, there is nothing to be played. That is fluidity as well. That is flowing as well, freely flowing as well. There is no one stable you that is being played. And this is like we have this like Black Mirror episode where someone is making decisions, and movies can make you believe that there is something like that. But in direct experience, you clearly see that what you call yourself, what you call the process of choosing, the process of picking or teasing apart thoughts from one another, that too, that process of picking is just another thought. You are choosing one thought from another, but the mechanism that you call self, I am choosing it. The way you choose it, one thought or another, that too is another thought. It's just like concealed. It's almost like you're choosing it from the backstage. And because you don't see the choosing, you assume free volition because you do not see how the choosing is being done. But if you look closely and see that the choosing itself is another thought, and that too lacks free will, then everything is lacking free will. It's just freely floating. And the lesson for this philosophy and this everything and this like realization that we do not have free will is that whatever people do, they do not choose. It doesn't mean that there are no bad people with bad intentions, and just means that they have not chosen their intentions. Sometimes people think that, oh, there's no free will, therefore all intentions are equal. No, it's not right. Sam Harris is a great analogy here that you can step over someone's toe accidentally or intentionally to hurt them, right? So the result is the same. You stepped over someone's toe, but the intention was different. Some brain intended to make harm, and some brain just like missed the visual stimuli of a toe or proprioceptive stimuli of bumping onto a toe. It doesn't mean that intentions doesn't exist. It's just like people do not choose themselves. People do not choose themselves. So whatever lives they live, whatever intentions they have, they do not choose them. Robert Sapolsky has the explanation of it's just genes, the environment, none of which you have chosen. This is the explanation on a macro level, and the micro level explanation is that the thoughts that are emerging in your consciousness that are the substrate for making decisions, the inspirations that are the basis for making decisions, they just happen. They just happen. Now, for instance, when I'm talking, I have a sense, I know the topic, right? But I am not actively choosing the words or sentences or syllables which I'm using. They are just happening. It's just unfolding. I'm not actively choosing any of the words. I'm sitting here and I'm witnessing this expansion, this unfolding, the same way you are witnessing it. And that is the reason why some writers, when they write, they have a sense that they are almost like reading a book. For instance, when I'm writing, I have a sense that, I am writing it, but I'm the first reader of my book because I don't know what I'm going to write next. I might have a sense of the topic that I'm writing, but I do not know the actual content that I'm writing. And this is important because that's the basis of art, that's the basis of all creative endeavors, because things just happen. And the reason why some things are beautiful, why they inspire us, is because they are truly foreign. For instance, like why do musicians play? Because especially if they have played it many times, that's because they don't know what will happen. Because when they start playing, there's so many things to control that their body is doing it, and they are just riding the train. They don't know what will happen. That is the thrill that they get because they truly don't know what's going to happen next. That is the basis of lack of free will. Our body has this wisdom, and it's just happening, and hopefully it happens for good. But it's just happening. And the other implications that it has is for forgiveness, because if you truly understand that people do not choose their intentions, people do not choose their genes, there is a place to forgive anyone. It doesn't mean that we do not have to separate or isolate other individuals from society who are harmful with bad intentions. It just means that they had not chosen it. And if we could help their brain to produce better intentions, we should. And the last piece of this discussion is that sometimes people think that, oh, I do not have free will, and therefore there is no way to improve myself, or there is no way to change my life. And this is also not true. The lack of free will doesn't mean that you cannot have different inputs in life. Lack of free will just means that whatever input you happen to choose, it is influenced by the processes that are unfolding on its own. So there is no one you that you can choose the stimuli with. So it just happens on its own. But it doesn't mean that you cannot make better decisions for yourself. You have a capacity to make better decisions. If you happen to not make better decisions, you do not have to blame yourself, because you truly chosen these things that you have chosen because there was no alternative. We are not really trying to harm ourselves. We are making decisions on the basis of the knowledge that we have at the given time. And if we had a better knowledge, we would make better decisions. If you all of a sudden bumped my IQ to 1,000 points, I might decide to not record this video and go outside and just, I don't know, enjoy the night sky. I don't know, like what happens, right? What decisions will I make by then? But I am making the decisions on the basis of the knowledge that is available right now for me. It doesn't imply that I cannot change myself, I cannot have better conscious experiences. The lack of free will is not a hindrance or a limitation to having better experiences in this life. It's just like the mechanism by which you choose anything in this is freely unfolding. There is no you by which you can choose things. And when you are choosing things, it's just happening. We can still have this sense that we ourselves riding these machines, and it's something that's natural, and it's possible to decouple this sense as well during meditation, but it's not necessary. You can have a healthy sense of self and be yourself in this life. Deep down, you can have a sense that whatever is unfolding is just free. It's just free space, and things enter this canvas of consciousness, things leave this canvas of consciousness. Where does this thought go? Where it disappears, right? Who knows? It's not a limitation to changing our lives or making better decisions. It's just a space in which we better understand ourselves and forgive others, because they have not chosen their intentions. They truly have not chosen their intentions. And once you understand how you make decisions, it actually helps you to make better decisions, because you understand the influence of subliminal messages in your life, the influence of inputs in your life. You understand that we are like flowers. If you put flower in the bad environment, the flower might decay, it might die, right? What I learned thinking deeply about free will is that I have to make sure that I pre-design the environment in which the kind of behavior that I aspire to make is easy to make. Lack of free will is the basis of books such as Atomic Habits and stuff like that, because this whole notion that environment determines, this environment influences your decision is just like that's the same basis. If there is like Stanford prison experiment where you put nice people in the prison and they all of a sudden become a-holes, and like this environment determines the action. Because like when people believe that they are truly making decisions themselves and nothing is influencing their decisions, they can make erroneous decisions in this life, because we know that like even the type of food you eat that can influence your decisions. Even the smell, like there's an experiment where judges were hungry and they were more critical when they were hungry, when they were making decisions, they were hungry at the same time. It sounds like that our decisions are shaped by our inputs. If 2 + 2 = 4, this equation cannot decide to be 5, because 2 + 2 = 4. If you have 2 + 3, it will be 5. The equation, the result, the right side of things cannot decide to be whatever it wants. It is tied to the left side of the equation, right? So this environment, this left side of the equation is shaping our decisions. And if we want to make decisions, we better design the environments in which the kind of decisions that we want to make is easy. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I see you in the next one. Thank you.